Honestly speaking, I am more of a movie person than a book. So, reading and incurring meaning from man's search for meaning was a bit difficult. However, I recall Sadhguru once saying that everything is happening naturally. You just need to be there. We try to understand everything intellectually, and that's where the problem comes. The nature of our intellect is such that we perceive things in a complex manner. I kept this in mind and tried to accumulate the simplest things Viktor Frankl had stored in his book. Frankl, in his 1946 book Man's Search for Meaning, chronicles his experiences in the concentration camp during the Nazi regime and his findings of logotherapy, also known as the Third Venice School of Psychotherapy, by some psychologists. According to a survey conducted by Book of the Month Club and the Library of Congress, this literary work belongs to a list of 10 most influential books in the United States. The text has also been translated into 24 languages. What allured me was the line, "Life is not a quest for pleasure, but for meaning." What is happiness? Simply a mixture of certain chemicals in the brain or something really complex to understand? A gambler is the happiest when the dice is spinning and not when it stops. After it stops, he has to make an acceptance of whatever the result is. This example tells us that happiness is not a destination, rather a process of growing. We should try to unearth the meaning hidden in it, in the process. What if we are successful in deciphering this meaning in the course of our difficult times, our suffering? Isn't this somewhere connected to the ultimate salvation, moksha? Talking about the experiences of Frankl, I got to learn several psychological processes going on in the prisoner's mind throughout the lifespan and not just a brief tenure in the concentration camp. Living a slave's life in the camp sounds more devastating than the ones who get killed. The ideas such as getting a cigarette was kind of prestige, worth flaunting as they got special coupons than that of a soup bowl which could literally satisfy their ever deteriorating selves. Though being a thin, watery, tasteless liquid was pretty staggering. The state of being not fully conscious or unconscious, also known as delirium, was a common thing in the camp. While reading this book, I was reminded of Demian by Hermann Hesse. The theme of this book was the fight between good and bad and self actualization. Chaos within you will give rise to a new dancing star is a very famous quote which aptly defines Demian's theme. I would like to connect some of Demian's quotes with that of Frankel's experiences. I have no right to call myself the one who knows. I was the one who seeks, and I still am. But I no longer seek in the stars or in books. I am beginning to hear the teaching of my blood pulsing within me. My story isn't pleasant. It's not sweet and harmonious like the invented stories. It tastes of folly and bewilderment, of madness and dream, like the life of all people who no longer want to lie to themselves. I realize that nothing in this world is more tasteful to a man than to take the path that leads to himself. The things we see, Pistorius said softly, are the same things within us. There's no reality except the one contained within us. That is why so many people live such an unreal life. They take the images outside them for reality and never allow the world within to assert itself. You can be happy that way, but once you know the other interpretation, you no longer have the choice of following the crowd. Sinclair, the majority's part is an easy one. Ours is difficult. I also wish to compare and contrast man's search for meaning with the recent hit Squid Games. We witness a dehumanizing existence that involves a struggle for survival against a system designed to annihilate them. The only difference was people were willing in Squid Games despite knowing the consequences, which wasn't the case for man's search for meaning. Interesting part comes when we get to see naked human minds in Squid Game deliberately, mercilessly, brutally killing each other, whereas the concentration camp prisoners were united till the end, standing against each other like strong pillars. Coming to logotherapy, it originated from the Greek word logos, which translates into meaning. Logotherapy is based on the premise that humans are driven to find a sense of meaning and purpose in life. According to Frankl, life's meaning can be discovered in three different ways: by creating a work or accomplishing some task, by experiencing something fully or loving somebody, by the attitude that one adopts towards unavoidable suffering. For example, when a man consulted with Frankl due to severe depression following his wife's death, Frankl asked him to consider what would have happened if he had died first and his wife had been forced to mourn over his death. Such is the power of logotherapy. Talking about my favorite quotes, there are tons of them, but to be precise, what man actually needs is not a tensionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal, a freely chosen task, is my favorite. Somehow, this line again ponders upon the never ending dilemma of finding meaning in suffering. I especially like the ending of this literary work, as the writer leaves it to be eternal by saying, "A man who for years had thought he had reached the absolute limit of all possible suffering now found that suffering has no limits, and that he could suffer still more and still more intensely."